With old Palpy returning, I thought it would be fun to do a recap of the most evil person in all of Star Wars. Sheev Palpatine is the ultimate evil in the Star Wars galaxy, perhaps even a physical manifestation of the dark side itself by the events of the Rise of Skywalker. Without bogging everyone down with every minute detail of the Dark Lord of the Sith, we will go over the major events of the films, with some minor ancillary material peppered in as needed. So, without further ado, I present Palpatine, Dark Lord of the Sith. During the events of the prequel trilogy, which took place 32 years before what we know as the original trilogy, Palpatine was already making moves in order to assure his own future empire. Palpatine was already a secret Sith Lord under the tutelage of Darth Plagueis the Wise, and his side hustle was that of a senator on the planet Naboo, which was also his homeworld. Initially, Darth Sidious orchestrated an invasion of his homeworld by virtue of the Trade Federation. This invasion would create a crisis, which would cause unrest in the Galactic Senate, allowing Palpatine to usurp the current Chancellor's role, pushing Palpatine closer towards galactic domination. Palpatine was also able to extend his term as the Supreme Chancellor, giving him more opportunity to twist the Republic into chaos. Palpatine also had a Sith apprentice under the name Darth Maul, who he used as a Sith assassin primarily to hunt down the Queen of Naboo. Ultimately, the Queen proved pivotal in Palpatine's consolidation of power. Her vote of no confidence was what got Palpatine into the place of Supreme Chancellor. After the death of Darth Maul at the hands of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Sidious gains a new apprentice, Count Dooku, who was once a former Jedi, and now known as Darth Tyrannus under Sidious. We also have our first interaction between Palpatine and Anakin Skywalker, who is supposed to be this chosen one to bring balance to the Force by defeating the Sith. And Palpatine now has his eye on this young boy. If the Force struck back with this boy as suggested in the Darth Plagueis novel, then Palpatine will surely manipulate it any way that he can. After the events of the crisis on Naboo, Palpatine orchestrates so much political unrest throughout the galaxy that entire systems themselves have left the Republic, forming what is known as the CIS. His new apprentice, Dooku, is the leader of the separatist movement, and Palpatine continues to play both sides, the Sith and the political, to further his goals. The secret creation of a clone army was also already underway as well, and I think it's pretty clear that Sidious had direct involvement from day one with the Kaminoans, who cultivate the clones. I mean, why else would there be a very specific set of orders that only Palpatine himself could execute using clones as his proxies? Palpatine and Dooku are building a droid army on Geonosis, which is the meeting grounds of the separatist movement, and on the Republic side of things, they are now aware of this clone army as well. However, they are unable to come to any agreement on how to utilize them. Once the Senate becomes aware of what is happening on Geonosis, it plays right into Palpatine's overall plan. Palpatine is granted executive powers by none other than Jar Jar Binks in order to send in the clone army to deal with the droids on Geonosis and aid the trapped Jedi. Now, Palpatine has caused two things to occur. The Clone Wars have officially kicked off, which is exactly the kind of destabilizing event for more consolidation of power, and he has militarized the Jedi Order. Oddly, Sidious is turning the peacekeepers of the galaxy into weapons of the Republic, and they can't even sense that yet. At the end of Attack of the Clones, Palpatine is also given plans to his future superweapon, known as the Death Star. When we next see the Chancellor Palpatine, he is being held prisoner aboard the Invisible Hand, which is the ship of General Grievous, a commander of the droid army. Count Dooku is present here as well, believing that he and his master have finally lured in the Jedi into a trap. Unfortunately for Dooku, Sidious is actually the puppet master here, wanting Anakin Skywalker, the chosen one, to strike down Dooku using the dark side. Palpatine has been playing the part of friend and confidant for Anakin, as we come to find out in Revenge of the Sith. Darth Sidious's plans to seduce the chosen one to the dark side is taking root in this moment. Anakin decapitates Dooku after Sidious eggs him on, using an eye for an eye mentality. Eventually, Palpatine appoints Anakin as his own representative on the Jedi Council, creating tension amongst the Masters and Anakin. They deny him the rank of Master, and Anakin loses his chill. Again, this form of distrust and apprehension between the Order and Anakin is exactly what Palpatine wants. Palpatine feeds Anakin's frustrations with the Council, as well as second-guessing their decisions when they choose Obi-Wan to capture General Grievous over Anakin. He is manufacturing distrust. Palpatine wants Anakin to become the eyes and ears and the mouth of the Republic, which is essentially Darth Vader preparation. Palpatine ends up summoning Anakin to an opera so they can talk, and this is when the most important discussion of the saga takes place as far as I'm concerned. A calm and measured Palpatine tells Anakin about Obi-Wan finding Grievous, but also that he is worried that the Order didn't send Anakin on the mission. Anakin is their best, and he tells the young man to sit down next to him. From here, Palpatine's manipulation of Anakin is at play, talking about his worry about the plot to destroy him, specifically that the Jedi will overthrow him. The two admit their distrust in the Jedi, which gives Palpatine a perfect open to exposing that Anakin was in fact tasked with spying on him. Ultimately, Palpatine states all who gain power are afraid to lose it, even the Jedi. Realizing that this might not be the right approach with Anakin, he quickly turns the conversation to something more personal to get Anakin's full attention, something like life and death. Palpatine already knows what Anakin fears the most, his vision of Padme's death. Because of this, he tells Anakin the tragedy of Darth Plagueis, which allows him to convey the idea that he could learn this power to save the ones he loves from death. That knowledge and power was left with Darth Plagueis' apprentice after he had murdered his master, and then their meeting ends. Palpatine has planted the seed in Anakin's mind. After Obi-Wan Kenobi makes contact with General Grievous, Anakin is tasked with delivering the news to Palpatine. It's here that Palpatine finally reveals his true nature to Anakin Skywalker. Initially, it's more of Palpatine's suggestions on the Jedi and how they should be utilizing Anakin more often, but slowly Palpatine begins talking about the subtleties of the Force, and this gets Anakin's attention. He admits he even knows the dark side, and he rationalizes this by saying that he needs it in order to embrace a larger view of the Force. He tells Anakin that if he learns from him, if he learns the dark side of the Force, he can save his wife from certain death, fully revealing his true identity. Although Anakin doesn't kill Palpatine for being a Sith, Palpatine states that he can sense his anger, that Anakin wants to strike him down, and how that anger makes him powerful. And Palpatine almost gets off to the sensation of the dark side. As Anakin leaves to turn in Sidious to the Jedi Order, he knows at this point he has turned Skywalker's heart. Padme was his way in. Darth Sidious is then confronted by the Jedi, resulting in a pretty entertaining duel. We've never seen Sidious use his lightsaber, but here he acts like he is a feral animal. Mace Windu seems to get the upper hand on Sidious, but to be frank, it's unclear as we know that Sidious is a great schemer. And for all we know, he's orchestrated these events to unfold exactly the way that they did. Anakin enters the situation finding Windu, lightsaber drawn, and his mentor on the ground. Although Anakin knows that Palpatine is the Sith Lord, the two argue over how to deal with him, and Palpatine continues to play towards Anakin's sentiments, finally resulting in Anakin cutting off Windu's hands as he attempts to strike down the Sith Lord. Anakin needs Palpatine if he's going to save Padme. It's worth noting too that Palpatine's own Force lightning against Mace caused his bodily scarring and deformity, which he uses as leverage against the Jedi Order when talking to the Senate. However, I also think that this is perhaps Palpatine's true form, and the way his speech changes gives off a more demonic presence than before, as if something was unleashed. Regardless, Anakin pledges himself to the dark side and Palpatine if Palpatine can help him save Padme. Of course, Palpatine never intends to save her, but he continues his false promise of aiding Anakin in that particular endeavor. Sidious tasks his new apprentice with eliminating all remaining Jedi from the temple, and then traveling to Mustafar to murder every separatist leader. He can end his false war and begin his Galactic Empire. And we finally get to Order 66, Palpatine's secret order implanted into each clone which would cause them to kill all of their Jedi generals. Luckily, a few survive so we could have some more movies. Palpatine also holds a special session of Congress where he explains that the Jedi have tried to overthrow the Senate and that they will be hunted and defeated, and that finally, in order to assure safety and security, Palpatine will rearrange the Republic into his empire. Palpatine's plan, the ultimate plan of the Sith, has been achieved, a Sith empire in the galaxy engulfed in darkness. Palpatine shuts down the creation of the separatist droid army factories and essentially ends the war that he manufactured immediately. Palpatine and Grandmaster Yoda end up in a duel, which is almost a stalemate, but it appears to me that the scales truly are tipped towards the dark side here, with Sidious overwhelming Master Yoda eventually. Yoda does escape to safety, and Sidious senses that Vader is in danger, resulting in him heading to Mustafar himself. The fallen Anakin has been bested by Obi-Wan. His flesh was burned and his limbs all cut off. As Palpatine is always a man of preparation, he already has a cybernetic suit which will keep Vader alive. As his new apprentice becomes encapsulated in his new prison of armor, he learns that Padme died, but Palpatine lies to his apprentice, stating that in his anger, Vader killed her. and the unborn child. This would ultimately prove fatal to the Emperor's grand plan, or at the very least, due to the Rise of Skywalker, put his plan on pause. Now, there are comics in between here in Return of the Jedi. However, for our purposes, we will only cover essentials from A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. The big takeaway from the first two films are that Palpy finished his super weapon, the Death Star, in order to nullify any resistance to the Galactic Empire. When you can destroy entire planets, who can contest you? But the Rebel Alliance, which has formed out of people resisting Palpatine's rule, end up taking out the Death Star. And the individual who takes the killing shot is none other than Luke Skywalker, the son of his apprentice, Darth Vader. In Empire, we do have one scene between the Emperor and Vader discussing the son of Skywalker. In the eyes of the Emperor, Luke cannot become a Jedi, or it could be their undoing. What's interesting is the fact that Vader is Papa Skywalker, yet his master shows no concern over the fact that Vader knows that his son lives, after he had told Vader that the child Padme carried was dead. In my headcanon, Palpatine most likely was always aware of Vader's potential conflict in the light regarding his son. It would make sense that Vader's conflict would ignite at the mention of the child. But Vader does tell Palpatine Luke will join them or die. In Return of the Jedi, we finally get back to some Sidious scheming. The Emperor is back to oversee the final stages of the Death Star too. On top of that, he has plans to replace Vader with Luke as his Sith apprentice. The Emperor allowed the events of Return of the Jedi to unfold so that Luke Skywalker's friends would find themselves in a trap, with a fully operational Death Star to wipe them out. Palpatine's idea was to use Luke's fear of losing his friends to push him towards the dark side. With Vader bringing his son before the Emperor, Palpatine fuels Luke's anger. He taunts him to strike him down, again seeming to get off on the dark side energy flowing through Luke. This entire situation eventually turns into an all-out fight between Vader and Luke, resulting in Luke tapping into the dark side to overpower his father. Luke cuts off the hand of Vader. It seems like all is going according to plan. However, Luke realizes that he is heading down a similar path his father has, and is being manipulated by the Emperor. Rather than join Sidious, after defeating Vader, Luke tosses his lightsaber away, subverting Palpatine's expectations. It's the inverse of what occurred on the Invisible Hand. Rather than choosing the dark, Luke chooses the light. Now, Palpatine is enraged by what has transpired. The Emperor tells Luke because of his choice he will die. It proceeds to use Force lightning on him, bringing him close to the brink of death. What ends up stopping Luke's demise is Darth Vader being unable to watch his son, the son of Padme, the last link to his old life, die at the hands of Sidious. In a rather obtuse way, Darth Vader fulfills the original destiny of bringing balance to the Force and elimination of the Sith. Kinda. We imagine this as the official end of Palpatine, but nope, Palpatine also planned on what would occur after his death and subsequent fall of his empire, the Contingency Plan. In a nutshell, it's a self-destruct for the remaining empire. Only a hand-picked group of the empire lives, while the rest are systematically snuffed out to allow the New Republic to win the war. Tons of planets were obliterated in the process, including that of Naboo, and even planets sympathetic to the empire. Jakku also played an important role in this plan. A conservatory on the planet had charted paths into the unknown regions, which the chosen few of the fallen empire would travel towards aboard the Eclipse and many other vessels, in order to eventually regain their might and reclaim the galaxy in the future. Palpatine laid the foundation for the First Order. Now that we are in sequel trilogy territory, I could wrap this all up with some speculation. First, I do think that Palpatine has some form of control over the events of the sequel trilogy, based on the fact that the First Order emerged out of his contingency. What's unclear is how Snoke and Palpatine are connected. In my opinion, Snoke is merely just another Dooku, or perhaps a vessel for Palpatine to inhabit. Someone strong in the dark side of the Force, however, unable to fathom how Palpatine might be pulling his strings. I also think that when Rey heard the suggestion to strike down Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens, it was a temptation from Palpatine, just like he did with Anakin and Luke. However, this is only from the novelization. And we know that Luke is now eradicated from the galaxy because of a series of events orchestrated by Snoke, and with Snoke gone and Luke gone, it would seem like the perfect opportunity for Palpatine to return in full force. I mean, honestly, I feel like Palpatine could just be the dark side at this point, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video. Perhaps in his temporary death, he became stronger than anybody could ever imagine. And that is a line that is reverberated throughout fandom. So perhaps he's turned into some kind of dark side personified god. But honestly, that's it for now. That's all we know until we see the final film. I realize that recapping Palpatine could be like a 10-hour long video, but hopefully these points I went over give enough insight into the character, as well as potentially giving us some idea as to what might be up in the final story of Skywalker. May the Force be with you. AT AT is signing off.